Hi, I'm Kathleen Stavert. I'm an actor and I've been in Clean Slate, Wildfire, and Me and You for Talisman Theatre.
Hi, I'm Lynn Paquette, and I'm the Artistic and Executive Director for Talisman Theatre.
Lynn, I'm really curious to know how you select a play for translation. How does Talisman select a play?
Well, I go see a lot of plays, maybe up to 50 plays a year in Montreal,
Wow.
and not all just Québécois or contemporary stuff, a bit of everything, FTA. But I don't know, just almost instinct, what I like, or what sometimes I don't like, but I can see that we could do different or better, or not fall into the same trap. I sort of like plays that don't follow a regular linearity or have, I find the Québécois have a special way of telling stories, and they pull from different mythologies, and I don't know, they just have, they can be quite daring. They don't necessarily shy away from something that's taboo. So what I like is if I can see that a play will make the audience afterwards get into a conversation, if I've triggered them, if I've made them think, I think I've done my job. So I think those types of plays, but I look back on 20 years of plays that I've selected and I just don't, there's no rhyme or reason. There doesn't seem to be a lot of commonalities.
Well, it sounds like it's a lot of, yeah, like you said, like your own instinct and what you like or what you would see done in a different way.
Yeah.
Like if there's like some kind of spark somewhere.
Yeah. And there's also, in French, they have, I'm not sure how they call it, but the fifth or the invisible character, which is the language, the French language.
Okay.
And this component can change the level of our perception of a play. It could be very slang, it could be there's a lot of Québécicity, or I don't know how to call it.
Québécois-ness in it, yeah.
Québécois-ness or something.
Well, it's very representative of.
Yeah, if it's too
culture.
present, unfortunately, it can't go to the other side. It can't traverse the boundary of another language. There's too many losses.
Yeah.
Because there's losses and gains, but we don't want too many.
So I guess it has to be very specific in how the language is used in that play, in the play that you select.
Fighting for sovereignty and then saying no when it comes time to choosing a country. You're whining and you're whining again, and I'll be here if you're fucking upset!
You forgot to consider.
Because it's disgusting!
Being Québécois is not here. It's here.
That leads me to my next question, which is what are the steps in the translation process?
Yeah, so if I finally select a play, because it's difficult, I can only select one per year. I only have the capacity for that. So it has to be something I can carry for at least 2 years. It's at least a 2-year process before we get into the rehearsal hall. So I meet with the author, and then we find a translator. Some authors already are paired up with a translator. Then we have to sort of wait for that translator to be available. Once we've got sort of a director, a translator, and an author, then I can start applying for money to go through the translation process. And then I have to reapply for money afterwards once I've got an English version. But once we've got the money to translate, we go into a room with actors like yourself. When we go and we read the play, the first drafts of the English version together. And the author's there as well. Funny enough, the author often doesn't speak English. So the author has to just go on musicality or on rhythm or but they can't tell you that's the
Blind
wrong
trust.
tense, that's the wrong, and people don't
Yeah.
say that in English, or that's like sort of a French ghost in there that we have to get rid of. Or so it's an interesting process. It's a lot up to the actors in these steps to guide the translator.
Yeah, so it seems like you tend to do like Talisman does workshops as opposed to just going right into the rehearsal room with the script that's translated and done.
Yeah,
Right.
because our rehearsal time is condensed, and often the translator's not available to be present the whole process. So it's easier to try to just sit down and just work on the words. Because you've been in translation workshops. It's not just, you're not acting. Or it's a weird,
It's
well,
a
how do you,
balance. Yeah.
how do you do that? How do you get a phone call? Can you come into our translation workshop?
Yeah, well, it is different from going into a rehearsal room, because I think that like when actors go into the rehearsal room, it becomes about them. It's all about the actor. But when you go in, or at least my perception of it as an actor, but when you go into a translation workshop, it's not about the actor. There has to be, of course, some level of, there has to be good acting so that we can hear the text properly. But I guess like the tone and the texture of the play is completely different, because we, as the actor, we have to know when to step back and let the translator do their work. Because again, it's not really up to us. And we have to find that like balance between, sharing our opinion or our point of view on things, and again, like holding back and letting the discovery come from the writer, the translator. So it becomes completely about the text. It's all about the text. It's no longer, about the actor or the acting process.
So it's a different set of skills, I guess, to sit in for a block of 4 hours and you're not working.
Yeah, I think it is a different set of skills, because when we're in, the beginning of a rehearsal period, when we're doing table work, we're often asked what our opinion is on something, or we do a lot of text analysis and we talk about the characters, and it isn't really about this. We will delve into some character development just to understand what's going on underneath the words, especially if it's culturally relevant. Like, how do we bring that into the text that we're translating? But it's not, it's like not about the acting process, really. It's really, we have to stand back a little bit more.
Yeah, and usually the process involves, let's say, a 4-day work period, and then the translator goes back and makes some changes to the text. Then we come back for another work period, and then there's a public reading, or we invite intimate friends, and then you get feedback from a small audience, so that also helps different points of views. You need almost a village to make a good translation, I guess. You can't just be, I think, a lot of people get away with it, but just the translator sitting at her desk and...
Yeah, I think it's good to get the feedback, and I think that like if the actors are able to strike that balance between not giving too much, also of their own experience and their own knowledge on language, but also offering what they can to support the translator. If you're able to find that balance, then I think that the translators are really appreciative of that.
Oh, I think it helps a lot.
Because I think that like I'm not a translator, but any writer would say that when you're too deep in the work, it's really hard to see.
Yeah.
When you've got the blinders on, it's hard to see the bigger picture.
And you're bilingual too, so you can, the French script is usually in the space with us, so there's often a question of what was that in French? How does it?
Yeah.
But it is tricky not to give our own opinions. It's a balance.
I think like that's also the beauty of like being in Quebec, is that there's so many different ways to speak. the Quebecois language.
Yeah.
And so, I grew up in Quebec City, so the way that I would say something growing up in Quebec City might be different for someone who grew up in Le Bas-du-Fleuve or who grew up in La Beauce. And so the conversations that come from that are really interesting. Or, a French Ontarian that's translating the play, their cultural experience is completely different from the cultural experience in Quebec. So
That makes it hard for me to pick a translator because I
imagine,
usually only went to Quebec translators, but now I had to open up to people from Ottawa.
Yeah.
And now one of my favorite translators, if I have one, but she's actually not really from Quebec, so it's hard to find the person who will understand the nuance, I think, in the French and find the right nuance in the
because
English.
it's so specific. It's so specific. Yeah.
I woke up feeling great. I'm in myself. Eggs, bacon, sausages, pancakes, roast potatoes, baked beans, coffee, and juice. Oof. I was hungry. Then I saw the paper. The hammer strikes again. That night, before or after me, the hammer killed a grandmother and her grandson. And when the police arrived, they had trouble distinguishing between the bodies because the hammer had hit so hard. I wasn't hungry anymore. I went and had my shower.
So you were in a Talisman workshop recently.
Yeah, I was in, I've done 2 translation workshops. I've done 21 and I've done recently Chocolat. And that was a really interesting experience for me because the story is about a young Black girl growing up in Lévis. And I grew up in Quebec City, which is right across the river from Lévis, obviously as a young white girl. So it's not my experience, not my story whatsoever. So, that was a really, I find pertinent example of when is it my place to speak? When is it my place to offer information or the knowledge that I might have on a specific subject that we might be talking about? Because it's not my story. And I couldn't necessarily identify with all of the elements of the narrator.
Neither can I, as a
Yeah.
producer.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
tricky territory.
Yeah, but I really enjoyed that process. I really had a good time with that process because the text is so beautiful, so poetic, and I think it's important also just to sit back and listen to someone else's experience that's completely different from my own.
Well, I think that's why we go to the theater.
Yeah.
We don't want to see our own.
No, exactly.
Well, we can identify with things,
But
but
it's much more enriching to see that in front of us. And
and to live it as a group of people that don't really know each other in the dark, but you're feeling the same emotions almost at the same time, or
yeah,
I don't know, it's special.
Yeah.
You don't get to
very special and magical.
see that or feel that at the movies, or it's not the same.
Yeah,
You've got something
absolutely.
happening with the stage, something happening with the audience.
Yeah,
That's why we do what we do. That's why we get up in the morning.
yeah.
Theater.
So pay us.
We'll try.
Oh, I don't mean you. I
Okay.
mean the world.
Yes, yes. They don't value us enough, I
You
guess.
don't have to put this.
No.
I think this is the most interesting part.